The day my mother was buried, my husband wore his best suit and spent the reception refilling his own glass. He didn't hold my hand once, not once. And I remember standing at her graveside thinking, she warned me. She warned me about him 11 years ago. And I smiled and told her she just didn't understand him the way I did. I understood him perfectly by the end. I just didn't want to admit what I was seeing. His name is Douglas Whitfield, and for 10 years he convinced me that the greatest thing I could contribute to our life together was to stay home, keep the house, raise our son, and be grateful that I didn't have to deal with the stress of a job. He said it like he was doing me a favor, like he was protecting me from something. "You're too sensitive for the corporate world, Renata," he'd say. "You'd fall apart in a boardroom. You're better at this." He'd gesture around our house, the spotless kitchen, the ironed curtains, the dinner warming on the stove, like all of it was proof that I was exactly where I belonged. And I believed him. That's the part that still stings, even now. I believed him. I had a marketing degree from the University of Georgia. I had 3 internships and a job offer from a mid-size firm in Atlanta that I turned down because Douglas said we were moving to Charlotte for his career, and it just made more sense for one of us to handle the household while the other built their professional future. He made it sound so logical, so temporary. "Just for the first few years," he said, "until we're settled." 10 years is not the first few years. In 10 years, I raised our son, Caleb, from infancy to a boy who reads above his grade level and plays travel soccer on weekends. I cooked approximately 3,650 dinners. I managed every home repair, every contractor, every school conference, every doctor's appointment, every birthday party invitation, every Christmas card list. I drove Douglas to the airport 42 times when his car was in the shop or when he'd had a drink at a work dinner. I proofread his presentations at 11 o'clock at night. I organized the dinner parties that made his colleagues think he was charming and well-connected. I did all of that without a paycheck, without a title, and without a single person ever asking how I was doing. My mother saw it. She'd come to visit and she'd watch Douglas at the table, how he never refilled anyone else's water glass, how he talked about his work for 40 minutes without once asking Caleb how school was going. And she'd look at me with those quiet eyes of hers and say, "You sure you're happy, baby?" And I'd say yes, because I thought I was, or because I was too far in to say no. My mother's name was Gloria. She was 67 years old, and she worked her entire life. She owned a small dry cleaning business in Savannah for 30 years, built it from a single machine in a rented storefront to a 3-location operation that employed 11 people at its peak. She never married after my father left when I was 4. She never complained about it. She just built. She just kept going. When she died of a cardiac event on a Tuesday afternoon in October, I lost the only person in my life who had never needed anything from me. The will was read 3 weeks later. I knew she had the business, the house in Savannah, and whatever savings she'd accumulated. I did not know how much that was. My mother did not discuss money. It wasn't something she brought up at the dinner table or mentioned in passing. She just worked and saved and kept her private life private. The attorney's name was Mr. Hartley. He sat across from me in his office on a Tuesday morning and read through the document in a steady voice. And by the time he finished, I was gripping the armrest of the chair because I was afraid if I let go, I might slide off it entirely. My mother left me everything. The 3 businesses, which had been recently appraised at $1.2 million collectively. The Savannah house, which had been paid off for 12 years and was valued at $490,000. And a savings and investment portfolio, accounts she had built quietly, steadily for 3 decades, totaling $867,000. I drove home that afternoon and sat in my car in the driveway for 35 minutes. Douglas was in the kitchen when I came inside. He was making himself a sandwich, and he looked up and said, "So, what did she leave you?" I told him. I watched his face change. It wasn't grief. It wasn't surprise on my behalf. No warmth, no, "Renata, that's incredible. Your mother was an amazing woman." What I saw was calculation. I could see it happening behind his eyes. The mental math, the repositioning, the quiet recalibration of what this meant for him. "That's marital property," he said, and he took a bite of his sandwich. I didn't respond. I went upstairs, I took a bath, and I cried for my mother for the first time since the funeral because I had been so busy managing all the logistics of her death, the obituary, the reception, the out-of-town relatives, that I hadn't actually allowed myself to grieve her. And that night, in that bathtub, I finally did. But I also thought very clearly about what Douglas had said. And I thought about the 10 years I had spent in that house. And I thought about my marketing degree and the job offer I turned down and the career I never had. And I thought about every dinner I ever cooked and every conference I ever attended alone, and every night he came home late without calling. And something that had been soft inside me for a very long time got very, very hard. I did not tell Douglas what I was planning. That was the first good decision I made. I called a friend from college, Priya, who had gone on to become a family law attorney in Atlanta, and I had coffee with her that Thursday while Caleb was at school. I told her everything. The inheritance, what Douglas had said, the 10 years of no income, no independent credit, no professional history. I told her I needed to understand where I stood before I did anything else. Priya listened to all of it without interrupting. Then she pulled out a legal pad and started writing. In North Carolina, she explained, inheritance is generally considered separate property, not marital property, unless it becomes commingled with marital assets. The key question was whether I had deposited anything into a joint account or used it to pay joint expenses. I hadn't touched it yet. It was still sitting in the estate account, waiting to be transferred to me, which meant if I acted quickly and deliberately, it could remain entirely mine. We talked for 2.5 hours. By the time I left, I had a plan. I opened a new individual checking account at a bank Douglas didn't use. I worked with Mr. Hartley to have the inheritance transferred directly into accounts in my name only. I contacted a business broker in Savannah about the dry cleaning operations. I had the Savannah house appraised again by an independent firm. I gathered every financial document from our marriage that I could access: tax returns, joint accounts, Douglas's retirement statements, the mortgage records, and I made copies of everything. I did all of this over the course of approximately 6 weeks. Douglas noticed nothing. He was focused on a merger his firm was handling and spent most of that period either at the office or on calls in the evenings. He occasionally asked if I had figured out the estate stuff, and I said I was working through it with the attorney, which was true. What he didn't know was that by working through it, I meant I was building a wall. Now, here is where I need to tell you something. In those 6 weeks, while I was quietly organizing my financial life, I also started looking more carefully at our joint accounts. Not because I was suspicious of an affair, I want to be clear about that. I was suspicious of something else entirely. I had been the household manager for 10 years. I knew what things cost. And when I started going back through our bank statements with fresh eyes and a sharpened mind, I found things that didn't add up. There were recurring charges I didn't recognize, a monthly transfer of $800 to a Venmo account I didn't know, A hotel charge in Raleigh on a weekend when Douglas had supposedly been visiting his college friend Mark in Nashville. A jewelry store purchase for $1,340 in March of the previous year. Our anniversary is in September and my birthday is in June, and I received neither jewelry nor anything else that March. I am not a dramatic person by nature. I want you to understand that. I did not spiral. I did not confront him. I printed everything out, put it in a folder, and brought it to Priya. She referred me to a private investigator. His name was not important, but his work was meticulous. Over the course of 3 weeks, he documented what I had suspected. Douglas had been in a relationship with a woman named Bethany, 29 years old, a leasing consultant at an apartment complex in Raleigh, for approximately 14 months. He had been paying a portion of her rent. He had taken her to Hilton Head in February, which he had told me was a work retreat. He had purchased the jewelry for her. I sat with that information for 4 days before I felt anything coherent. And then what I felt was not grief. It was a profound, almost peaceful sense of clarity, because now I knew exactly what I was dealing with, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. Priya filed the divorce petition on a Wednesday morning. Douglas was served at his office. I know this because the process server sent me a confirmation, and I also know because Douglas called me 11 times in the 40 minutes that followed. I let every call go to voicemail. His first message was confused. His second was frustrated. By the 5th, his voice had that particular edge I knew well. The one where he was trying to sound calm but wasn't. "Renata, what is this? Call me back right now. This is insane." I did not call him back. He came home that evening to find that I had arranged for Caleb to stay at my friend Denise's house for the night. It was just the two of us. He walked in, and he was already talking before the door was fully closed. "What the hell is going on? You can't just—" And I said, very quietly, "Sit down, Douglas." Something in my voice made him sit. I had a folder on the table in front of me. I had prepared it the same way I used to prepare his presentations. Organized, tabbed, thorough. I opened it and I placed the contents in front of him, 1 page at a time. The hotel receipt from Raleigh, the Venmo transfers, the jewelry purchase, the photographs the investigator had taken. Douglas and Bethany at a restaurant in Durham. Douglas and Bethany at what appeared to be her apartment complex. Douglas and Bethany at Hilton Head in February, the ocean behind them. He looked at each page. His face went through several things in sequence: recognition, panic, a brief flash of something that might have been shame, and then, to his absolute discredit, the thing I had been expecting. He tried to pivot. "You went through my finances? You hired someone to follow me? How is that not an invasion of—" "The finances are joint," I said, "and North Carolina is a fault state. Adultery affects equitable distribution. My attorney has already explained this to your attorney, who you will want to call tomorrow morning." He stared at me. "You want to know what's in this folder?" I said. I reached in and pulled out the last document, a summary Priya had prepared, outlining the legal position on the inheritance, the separate property protections I had already established, and the fault-based claims related to the marital funds he had redirected to Bethany over 14 months. "My mother's estate is protected, every cent. Your name is not on a single account it was transferred into. You have no legal claim to any of it." He said, "We'll see what a judge says." I said, "I hope you mean that, because I'm ready." He didn't mean it. His attorney, once fully briefed on the evidence, the photographs, the financial records, the established paper trail of marital funds being used to support a third party, advised him, strongly I assume, to settle. We went to mediation rather than trial. It took 2 sessions. I kept the inheritance. All of it. Every dollar my mother spent her life building came to me intact and untouchable. I kept the Charlotte house, which was appraised at $620,000 and on which Douglas had been making mortgage payments for 8 years. In light of the financial misconduct, the redirected funds, the documented use of marital money for his affair, my attorney successfully argued that the equitable distribution should account for what had been diverted from our joint account. 14 months of $800 monthly transfers, plus the hotel stays, the jewelry, the Hilton Head trip, totaled and calculated and placed on the table. Douglas received considerably less than he had anticipated when he sat across from me in mediation, with that expression on his face like he still had the upper hand. He did not have the upper hand. He hadn't had it since the day I opened that bank statement in October. I also, and this part I want to say carefully because it wasn't revenge, it was consequence. I also allowed Priya to include the adultery documentation in the public filing. I did not pursue it privately. I did not make back-channel calls to Bethany's family or post anything on the internet. I simply did not suppress what was true. And when the filing became public record, as court filings do, Douglas's colleagues and his family and the people who had sat at my dinner tables and eaten my food and watched me take their coats at the door for a decade, they found out on their own. His mother called me. I did not answer. I did not need to. Caleb is with me. He is 9 years old, and he asks me sometimes why his dad isn't at soccer on Saturdays anymore. And I tell him that his dad has his own schedule now, but that he loves him very much. I keep it clean. I keep it focused on my son. That part is not about winning. That part is about doing right by a child who never asked to be in the middle of any of this. I have started working again. I took a contract position at a marketing firm in Charlotte, remote, part-time to start, and my manager told me last month that she wants to bring me on full-time by the spring. I had been out of the industry for 10 years, and it still came back to me like muscle memory, like something that had been waiting patiently for me to come back to it. I am also in the process of selling 2 of the dry cleaning locations in Savannah and keeping the third, the one my mother opened first. The original storefront. I am not ready to let that one go. My name is Renata. I spent 10 years being told I was too sensitive for the real world. I spent 10 years cooking dinners and managing calendars and proofing presentations and making someone else's professional life possible while my own sat in a drawer. And when the person I gave all of that to tried to take the one thing my mother left me, the thing she built with her own hands over 30 years, I did not cry. I did not beg. I opened a folder. I keep that folder in my desk drawer now, not because I need it, just to remind myself what I'm capable of when someone underestimates me. My mother knew. She always knew. I just needed a little longer to catch up with her.